Welcome back to my channel. My name is Mark. Before this video starts, I want to let all my viewers know that this story is different than the usual stories I post on this channel. I hope you all are able to learn something valuable from it. The focus of this channel is to spread awareness of infidelity and how it impacts people's lives. Now let's get into today's story to find out what happened. About 25 years ago, I was in the military and was on a 2-year assignment from where my 38-year-old wife and I lived. We had been married about 20 years at that point, so I only came home on the weekends. After the first year, my wife started telling me to just stay there and not come home until my assignment finally ended. I refused and continued coming home on the weekends. She started treating me very coldly and not wanting to be intimate on those weekends. Then after another 3 or 4 months, she started randomly accusing me of cheating on her and continued being cold towards me. When my remote assignment ended, I was given orders overseas for 3 years, so I started preparing to rent out our house and move my wife and teenage sons. My wife constantly fought with me about it by saying she did not want to go and that I should go by myself. Also during this transition, she was still cold and distant. My kids wanted to go, so she finally agreed to go. Once we got to the new location, she started constantly finding fault with everything with me and the location. So after 6 months there, I received permission to move her and my kids back home at the end of the year. The next 6 months were cordial at best. She was still cold but allowed some intimacy about once a week. As the end of the year drew closer, she became excited about moving back and withdrew from me again. She stayed withdrawn from me for the last month or so. I took a 2 weeks leave about a week after she departed with the kids and went back home to help out. After about 3 hours of arriving, she was telling me to just leave and go back to my base. I stayed for about 10 days and returned to my base overseas. I was there for another 2.5 years. I would go home about every 4 months for 10 days and be treated the same way as I was the first time. We would be intimate twice in those 10 days, but I got a feeling she was doing it out of a feeling of obligation rather than desire. Also, she acted as if she wasn't really happy I was there, and even stated she would like it better if I did not come back home until my time overseas was finished. For that remaining 1.5 years, she remained cold and distant when I visited, and whenever I would call her to see if all was okay. If I mentioned I had gone to a cookout or bowling, she would accuse me of cheating and hang up. She would also constantly tell me everything was my fault and was always in her way of doing what she wanted. After I finally got transferred back, the coldness and distance remained. After 6 months back, I moved out. I stayed gone and even told her that if that is the way she was going to be, I wanted a divorce. So she agreed to marriage counseling. We went, but it was mostly a joke. She blamed her coldness and distance on me for not understanding her and what she wanted. So I moved back home and just ignored it from then on. I left the military and got a job that required constant traveling. Now 25 years later, we are both in our 60s and retired. I have a lot of time on my hands now and time for self-reflection. Hindsight is almost always 20/20. Now, I question her actions as I look back and analyze them using various articles I have read from people who analyze cheating spouses. My wife's actions back then fit the pattern given by other cheaters, even though I don't have the proof. Over the years since then, some of her friends and previous co-workers have made snide remarks about her possibly cheating during get-togethers while the alcohol flowed. I have mentioned it to her a few times. She never denies what they say but responds by questioning their honesty, or that they were probably doing it themselves. We still have an occasional blowout. A few times I have been so emotionally drained by always being who she lashes out at that I leave for a few hours just to get my composure back. When I come back, I tell her that I will leave if that is what she wants. Then she immediately states that she never cheated on me and has always been faithful. To recap, 25 years ago, my wife exhibited the cheating telltale symptoms listed by many professionals in the marriage counseling field. She pushed her spouse away, became distant, constantly found fault with her spouse, constantly denied cheating even though never accused of it, and constantly accused her remote spouse of cheating. Also, she constantly worked overtime on the weekends at her company even though no one else did except her boss. This occurred for about 3 years. So now to my question or dilemma. We have been married for 45 years now. I am now questioning our entire married years. I can't bury it in the back of my mind anymore. Should I leave this sleeping dog alone? Or should I discuss it all with her and probably tear our marriage apart? A few of her co-workers, also Asian, are still around. They were also her friends. I have to be really careful because they stay in touch on Facebook. So I know a couple of the husbands and will possibly try to talk with them. The 2 oldest kids are already out of the house. The youngest lived in the video game world and never paid much attention to her comings and goings. But I will talk with them for a little. Update. So I tried to reach out to someone and was very careful in what I said. His wife immediately called my wife asking why we were separated and other BS. I am glad I did not actually ask my real questions. So this tells me I can't. I will just confront her directly and try to get her to believe I actually know something and not just suspicion. I need to get my physical living accommodation set up here in the US first. Next update. It has been a while since my original post and short update. I might have posted an update after the ones on the original post. So I confronted her. She denied what happened and kept asking who told me. She then just brushed it off as whoever it was must just be jealous of her. Even after I itemized her behavior back then in detail, she just continued to deny it. Then she started accusing me of not being nice back then, and that I hurt her by not trusting her. She also kept wiping non-existent tears. As soon as I backed off, she just started saying that I had bad communication with her. Since then I tried to get past it and took her on a Caribbean cruise, but I just don't have those loving feelings. At this point I don't wish her any misfortune but just want to leave her. Now my oldest son and his family decided to get ancestry DNA tests. They also told me the wife and I should. So I did, and I had my youngest do it also. Turns out that my oldest son and my youngest son are only half brothers. The DNA test also shows that my oldest son is not my biological son but my youngest is. I never suspected this. My wife was pregnant for about a month before we met. 2.5 months into our relationship she told me she was pregnant. I was 19, so I assumed it was mine. I was quite naive and stupid then. So my upbringing and my infatuation convinced me that I needed to marry her. I ended up raising 2 kids that weren't mine. She had a 4-month-old when we met and one that was. I love the 2 oldest just as much as my youngest. That will never change. I have not told the wife about this yet. I need to discuss it with my oldest son and then all 3 of them. Then I will also inform them that I'm divorcing their mother. The 2 oldest will have to ask her who their biological fathers are because I have no clue. Then I will video chat with her and inform her of everything and my intentions to file. I strongly feel there was an emotional affair and a physical affair that happened 25 to 30 years ago. I most likely will never know for sure. What I do know though is that my oldest son isn't mine. Final update. At the end of my last update I was going to tell my kids the truth and then the wife. I told my kids 5 days ago. It was pretty tough. All of my kids took it pretty well, but I think my oldest son may still be processing it. I do not know if their biological dads are the same individual or 2 different men. So the oldest child will get a DNA test also. I told both of them to ask their mom. Hopefully she will remember and tell them. I decided to just text my wife instead of video chat. After 40+ years I knew that would end badly. I would probably lose my composure and blow up, which wouldn't have helped. Also I am pretty emotional over this. The text was short and to the point. The DNA test showed the oldest child is not mine and is only a half-sibling to the youngest. I stated I did not accept being lied to for 40+ years. That the marriage was over and that I would be filing for divorce. She replied shortly after that. I did not respond to any of her texts. First it was a misunderstanding about her lying to me, and that she did not know. Then it was just us having bad communication. Then she was sorry that I had so much hate for her, and said she would sign the papers and hoped I would find someone that would make me happy. Next she started blaming me for everything and said that I never cared and trusted her. All of her texting was over the span of about 2 days. I texted her that I would only text her regarding the kids, grandkids and the divorce from now on. I included the financial support she will get and how. She asked if I would just send all of her belongings to her. Since then it has been dead silence from her. She has contacted the 2 oldest about everything. I have not done the paperwork yet but will do that shortly. That's all for now. OP, I am almost at a loss for words right now. Out of all the stories I've covered on this channel, this is by far the most heartbreaking story I've read. I honestly believe your wife is a full-blown psychopath. There is no way any sane person could lie to another person's face for over 40 years and not be bothered by it one bit. Your wife even went as far as to gaslight you and make it seem as if you were the problem. I highly recommend that you and your son seek therapy from this traumatic situation. I am so sorry to hear you went through this and hope you are able to recover soon. To all my viewers, I honestly had doubts about sharing this story. However, I realized that it needed to be shared because these kind of things can happen. Be extremely careful with who you marry, and remember to stand up for yourself. This story was heartbreaking to read, but the goal of my channel is to educate my viewers on the realities of infidelities that take place throughout the world, and how to deal with them. I truly do hope OP is able to heal from this situation. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.
Hey everyone, I have a jaw-dropping story to share with you today. Today I confronted her and the aftermath was something I had never witnessed before. It was an intense experience that left me shaken. I want to clarify that the following account was written on the day it happened, so my emotions might not perfectly align with the comments I made in the past few days. Please understand that I have a lot to process, and as a result, I may not be available to respond for a while. This incident has deeply affected me, and I hope to never endure something similar again. Confronting her today was undoubtedly the most challenging task I have ever faced. I find myself experiencing occasional tremors as if my nerves are on edge. She left today. Whether it was for work or to see Chris, I'm uncertain. I attempted to check her location, but either she had disabled it or my phone was malfunctioning. I lacked the means to track her down and address the situation. The anticipated confrontation is scheduled for later this week, but I couldn't afford to wait any longer. I needed to confront her before she had a chance to come up with any more elaborate fabrications. As I heard the sound of the garage door opening, I quickly activated the camera. She entered the room completely unaware of what was about to happen. I urged her to take a seat, trying to hide my own apprehension as her expression transformed into that of a deer caught in headlights. Finally, she complied and asked me what was troubling me. I asked her directly, "Why don't you just tell me?" She feigned ignorance, but I could sense that she was aware she had been discovered. With a hint of desperation, she repeated her question, asking me once more what was troubling me. Choosing a slightly different approach, I inquired about her relationship with Chris, urging her to be honest. She denied any involvement, claiming she hadn't heard from him. Instead of confronting her head-on, I decided to shift gears. I expressed my discomfort with her working alongside him, explaining that it was something I couldn't overlook or move past in our relationship. To my surprise, she immediately acquiesced, her agreement apparent in her demeanor. Nervously, she inquired about my sudden change of heart and the unusual way I was behaving. Shaking my head, I tried to articulate my perspective, expressing that I had initially wanted to be understanding but had grown uncomfortable due to unsettling vibes I had sensed from him. I made it clear that I preferred they didn't communicate. She insisted that Chris held no significance in her life anymore, emphasizing that her happiness stemmed solely from witnessing the book's completion. I informed her that he essentially took advantage of her, and she is far too forgiving considering the situation warrants legal action. Surprisingly, she agrees with me. At this point, she's likely contemplating ending her relationship with Chris as soon as she finds an opportunity. However, I then revealed to her that the entire ordeal has caused me immense stress, prompting me to take a week off from work. I informed her that during our conversation, I spoke with my ex, who graciously agreed to take care of our son for the weekend, allowing us to go to Vegas together. That's why I had a lengthy conversation with my ex the other day, discussing the logistics of her looking after our son. Or at least, that's the explanation I want her to believe. However, my attempt to mislead her is abruptly interrupted when she informs me that our Vegas trip has been canceled today due to unforeseen circumstances. The conversation from here on goes like this, paraphrased, of course.
Me.
It got canceled last month. Her.
No.
He told us today because he wasn't sure whether or not it was off until today.
Me.
I know it got canceled last month. Her. What are you doing? Why are you telling me you want to go and then telling me it's canceled? I don't get what you're doing.
Me.
It was canceled last month. What were you going to do if I didn't ask about it? Her. You're freaking me out.
Me.
It was actually canceled today. So, what were you planning to do? Or, what are you accusing me of? How long have you and Chris been back together? Or, have we not done anything? Did he tell you that we are you and me? Please don't lie to me. I don't want to go through the painful task of reading out all the hurtful things he texted. It almost made me sick when I did it the first time. I can't believe you would do this. Her. I love you. I'm sorry. He's been texting me a lot lately and saying a lot of messed up stuff. And I don't know how to handle it. It was canceled today.
Me.
What were you going to doing? Or, what are you accusing me of?
Me.
How long have you and Chris been back together? Or we haven't done anything. Did he tell you we were?
Me.
Don't lie to me. I don't want to read off everything he texted. It almost made me throw up doing it the first time. I can't believe you do this. Her. I love you. I'm sorry. He's been texting me a lot lately and saying a lot of messed up stuff. And I don't know how to deal with it. It's part of the reason why we broke up. I told you that I knew I shouldn't have responded to his messages. It's always drama with him. All his messages were fine. But he started with the missing me stuff again. Like always, I was going to tell you he wanted you to come home and kiss me after you were going down on it. I read your messages. I saw them in your email and in your texts. You're cheating on me. And I want you out of this house today. Or what? I'm not cheating on you. If you don't want him around, I'll tell him to get lost. But honey, I'm not cheating on you. Is that what he told you? He's lying. Me, stop it. I told you I went in your messages on your phone. You're going to get your stuff, and you're going to go to your parents. I made copies of your emails and screenshots from your texts. I refuse to conceal the content of your conversations any longer. If you persist in deceiving me directly, I will take the necessary steps to reveal it. Our relationship is over. Please collect your belongings. Despite everything that has transpired, I must acknowledge that she made an attempt to feign ignorance and continue with the falsehoods. However, her facade eventually crumbled under the weight of the evidence as I handed her the printed copies of your text exchanges. As she glanced at them briefly, her emotions overwhelmed her and she broke down into inconsolable tears, displaying a level of devastation I had never witnessed before. Initially, I experienced a brief moment of sympathy towards her. She expressed remorse, claiming that the situation had spiraled out of control and she wished to put an end to it. However, she revealed that her partner had become possessive and resorted to threats of exposing their relationship if she tried to break things off. I pointed out that none of these details were evident in their text conversations, emphasizing that she was continuing to deceive me. She had planned to spend the upcoming weekend with her partner, but she suddenly declared that it was over between them and assured me that she would make sure he ceased to be a part of her life. She assured me adamantly that she would sever all ties with him, vowing never to engage in conversation with him again. Meanwhile, I informed her that I had taken steps to consult with a lawyer and the divorce papers would be prepared in the near future. Upon hearing this, she erupted in outburst, repeatedly exclaiming, "You've been talking to a lawyer." The intensity of her reaction escalated to a point where I felt concerned for my safety, and I contemplated contacting the authorities in an attempt to defuse the situation. I urged her to calm down and reassured her that our interaction was being recorded by a surveillance camera. Subsequently, she continued to experience a profound emotional breakdown, appearing unrecognizable compared to anyone I had encountered before. She persistently accused me of orchestrating a meticulous plan, smiling deceitfully as I supposedly plotted everything. In response to each accusation, I reiterated the evidence of her own actions, pointing out how she had been scheming and displaying a false demeanor towards me while engaging in questionable activities. Attempting to make sense of the situation, I questioned why she would inflict this pain upon us. Initially, she struggled to provide a coherent response, leaving me without a clear understanding of her motivations. She attempted to explain that it was merely a meaningless period of enjoyment, to which I retorted with, "So you essentially destroyed our relationship for no valid reason. And that's wonderful." As time went on, she became somewhat more subdued, leaving me uncertain whether her words were genuine or an attempt to inflict pain. However, it became apparent that she deeply regretted her actions with him, referring to him as her soulmate. I was overcome with intense emotions, almost to the point of wanting to destroy objects in my surroundings. I couldn't help but question why she hadn't chosen him over me from the start. I would have been more understanding if she had explained that she wanted to distance herself from him due to concerns about her family's disapproval and the negative impression it would leave. It appears that her family held unfavorable opinions of him as well. Additionally, she emphasized that she could never truly be with him, as her ex-partner and daughter would strongly oppose such a decision. Returning to him was never a realistic option for her. Afterward, she expressed remorse and seemed astonished by my resolute stance on the matter. She admitted to the gravity of her mistake and pleaded for a chance to make amends, promising to do whatever it took to repair the situation. In response, I firmly declined her offer. She then asserted that we wouldn't be getting a divorce, believing that she could make things right. However, I informed her that there was nothing she could do to regain my forgiveness. I made it clear that I would never forgive her for what had transpired. Surprisingly, she displayed astonishment in the face of my unwavering stance. I informed her of my actions, revealing that I had recently opened an account in a separate bank and transferred half of the funds from our joint account into it. The remaining balance was hers, and she had the option to retrieve it herself or allow me to handle the matter. I made it clear that the joint account would be closed. She simply nodded in understanding and suggested that we would likely need to visit the bank together to complete the closure process. Subsequently, she began calmly packing her clothes, occasionally shedding tears and curiously interspersing threats that nothing should go missing. I shrugged it off and calmly suggested that she document the condition in which she left her belongings and her daughter's belongings. This way, when she returned, she would be able to see for herself. I assured her that I hadn't touched anything. Her parents were informed, and they were astounded by the situation. They expressed their surprise that Chris was even involved and spent time apologizing to me. Shortly after she left my house the following day, my ex-spouse bombarded my phone with numerous texts expressing love and apologies, insisting that we could resolve the issues. It got to the point where I considered getting rid of my phone altogether. I contemplated switching off my phone, but since my ex-wife had custody of our son, I felt it was necessary to keep it on in case of any emergencies or last-minute changes when he was returning home. Instead, I found myself responding to her text messages by sending screenshots of the most unpleasant parts of our conversation, choosing to remain silent. To my surprise, my ex eventually arrived with our son and even brought dinner from my favorite Chinese restaurant. When I broke the news to my son, I didn't provide him with all the details, but he directly asked if his mother had cheated on me. The suddenness of the situation led him to make that assumption, and without delving into specifics, I confirmed his intuition. They stayed with me for a while before heading back home, but ever since then, it feels like we've all been in a state of limbo, trying our best to maintain some semblance of normalcy within the house. As I write this, a couple of days have passed, and I'm about to head to the gym before meeting with my lawyers. This situation has become incredibly overwhelming, with new developments unfolding at a rapid pace. I could spend hours typing and still not capture all the updates regarding my soon-to-be ex-husband. He is scheduled to pick up his daughter's belongings, and I will do my best to explain to her that she can always reach out to me if she needs anything. As for contemplating whether to disclose to her ex-husband about her involvement with Chris, it seems like a futile endeavor. It wouldn't achieve much in the grand scheme of things. Anyway, I've already fought and won the first battle in this ordeal, but there's still much more to come. Given the circumstances, it's hard to define winning, but I've managed to navigate through this challenging situation as best as I can. Although there's a part of me that desires to confront Chris, I recognize that it would only drain my time and energy, accomplishing very little. It would be wiser to focus on my work, hit the gym, or find a meaningful way to express my gratitude to my ex-wife, who has been an absolute MVP, supporting me throughout this entire ordeal. Well, that's all I can share for now. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story. If this story left you speechless, hit that like button, comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more intense. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I have an unbelievable and intense story to share with you. Something's off, I can feel it. She's speaking less, laughing less. Those eyes, usually so sparkling, now seem to harbor secrets. I start to snoop, subtly at first. Her phone, always locked. Her overtime at work, a bit too frequent. And the way she leaps for her phone the moment a message pings. It's driving me crazy. I remember the early days, how we used to share everything. Our phones were an open book, our lives an open diary. But now, there's a divide, a chasm that's widened silently, stealthily. I start to wonder, what changed? When did the laughter start to fade and the silences grow longer? One night, I hear her whispering on the phone. The soft murmurs seep through the thin walls of our apartment. I strain to listen, but the words are muffled, elusive. The next morning, I ask casually about her call. She brushes it off, says it was a colleague about a project. But there's a flicker in her eye, a brief hesitation that wasn't there before. I start to pay more attention, piecing together the small changes. The new perfume, the extra care she takes with her appearance, the late nights at the office, when I can't quite reach her on the phone. The way she's suddenly protective of her personal space, her things. One evening, as she showers, her phone buzzes incessantly. Driven by a mix of curiosity and a gnawing suspicion, I edge closer. The screen lights up with a message, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My heart sinks. The sender's name is unfamiliar, just a set of initials. MD. Who is MD? I start to recall all the little things I've overlooked. The unexplained charges on our credit card statement. The way she's suddenly interested in new hobbies, things we never used to do together. And then there's her new friend, Lisa, whom I've never met but hear so much about. Suddenly, I wonder if Lisa is just a cover. My thoughts are a whirlwind of doubt and confusion. I want to confront her, to demand the truth, but a part of me is scared. Scared of what the truth might be, scared of shattering the fragile piece of our relationship. The following week, I find a receipt in her coat pocket. A hotel receipt, dated for a day she said she was working late. My heart races, my mind reels. Is this proof of her infidelity? Or is there another explanation, one that I'm too blinded by jealousy to see? I decide to confront her, to lay it all out. But every time I try, I falter. The words die in my throat, the fear of losing her overpowering my need for the truth. As the days pass, the atmosphere in our apartment grows heavier, laden with unspoken accusations and silent pleadings. We're like two actors in a tragic play, each aware of the other's unspoken lines, yet too afraid to deviate from the script. I know I need to find the courage to confront this growing chasm between us. But for now, I'm trapped in a limbo of suspicion and fear, caught in the deceptive calm of our little apartment, where every smile seems forced and every word feels laden with hidden meanings. I've turned into a full-blown amateur detective. I'm jotting down her hours of absence, tracking her calls. One evening, I overhear her laughing on the phone, a laugh I haven't heard for months. My heart tightens. I embark on a slightly crazy plan. I decide to follow her. One Friday evening, I see her get into a car that's not ours. I tail them from a distance. They head to a chic, little restaurant. My blood boils. As I sit in my car, watching her laughing and chatting with this stranger, I feel a mix of anger and disbelief. Who is this person? How long has this been going on? I'm torn between storming into the restaurant and confronting them or sitting back and gathering more evidence. In the end, I choose the latter, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. The following days, my life becomes a blur of shadowing and suspicion. I download a tracking app on her phone while she's asleep. It feels wrong, but my need to know the truth overshadows my guilt. Now, I can see her movements, every place she visits. I'm like a man possessed, constantly checking the app, trying to piece together her secret life. I also start listening in on her conversations, trying to pick up any clue, any mention of this mysterious man. Most of the time, I come up empty, but the fragments I do catch only fuel my suspicion further. One day, I find a piece of paper with a phone number scribbled on it, tucked away in her purse. I wrestle with myself over what to do. Finally, curiosity wins. I dial the number, my heart pounding in my chest. A man answers, his voice unfamiliar. I hang up without saying a word, but now I have a lead. I start researching the number, diving into the depths of social media and online directories. After hours of digging, I find a connection. The number belongs to a man named David, who works in the same industry as Clara. A quick look through his social media profiles reveals pictures of him at various events, sometimes with Clara in the background. The puzzle pieces start to fit together. I confront her again, this time with more evidence. She brushes it off, saying David is just a colleague, a friend. But her eyes don't meet mine, and her voice lacks conviction. My life has turned into a cycle of surveillance and suspicion. I'm tracking her every move, analyzing every word she says. I'm no longer living. I'm just observing, waiting for the undeniable proof that will either set my heart at ease or break it completely. One night, I follow her to a bar where she meets David. They seem close, too close for just colleagues. I watch from a distance, the pain and jealousy gnawing at my insides. I want to confront them, but I hold back, the fear of what might happen holding me in place. As I drive home that night, a heavy realization hits me. This pursuit, this obsession with knowing the truth, has consumed me. I'm lost in a maze of doubts and fears, and I'm not sure I'll ever find my way out. But I can't stop now. I need to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. So, I continue my pursuit, a shadow following in the footsteps of a life that once was mine, searching for answers in a story that seems to have already been written without my knowledge. The next day, I confront her. Clara is initially shocked, then breaks down in tears. She confesses everything. An affair with Mark, a colleague. She talks about feeling lonely, neglected. It's like a punch in the gut. But something doesn't add up in her story. I contact Mark, discreetly. He's surprised. He knew nothing about me. He thought Clara was single. We exchange information, and suddenly, everything makes sense. As I sit across from her, my mind races with a mix of emotions. Betrayal, anger, sadness. Her confession hits me hard, but the inconsistencies nag at me. How could she do this? And why lie about her relationship with Mark? She talks about feeling invisible in our relationship, like she was just going through the motions. I listen, a part of me understanding her loneliness, but another part of me boiling with anger. How could our love have faded so much that she sought comfort in someone else's arms? I ask about the details, how it started, when, why. Her answers are vague, filled with excuses and justifications. She talks about Mark being there for her when I wasn't, about finding a connection I couldn't provide. I leave the house, needing space to process everything. As I walk through the streets, a mix of memories and emotions swirl in my head. The happy times we shared, the signs I missed, the lies and half-truths. Later, I call Mark. His reaction is one of shock and confusion. He had no idea she was married. He thought she was separated, going through a rough patch. We talk for a long time, comparing stories, filling in the gaps. The more we talk, the clearer the picture becomes. Clara had created a separate life with Mark, a life where she was a different person. He tells me about their dates, their conversations, their plans. It's like hearing about a stranger, not the woman I married. I confront Clara again, armed with the new information. This time, her facade crumbles completely. She admits to the lies, the deceit. She talks about being trapped in a life she didn't want, feeling lost and alone. The revelations leave me reeling. Our marriage, once a source of happiness, now feels like a sham. The trust we built over years, shattered in a matter of days. As I try to come to terms with everything, I realize how blind I've been. I was so caught up in my own life, my own world, that I failed to see her struggles, her unhappiness. The confrontation ends with more questions than answers. Clara's confession has opened a Pandora's box of doubts and uncertainties. Where do we go from here? Can our marriage be saved? Do I even want to save it? I spend the night awake, thinking about the past, the present, the future. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, now feels like a stranger. And I'm left wondering if we ever really knew each other at all. As the first light of dawn breaks through the window, I realize that this is just the beginning. The road to understanding, to healing, is going to be long and difficult. But for now, I'm just trying to make sense of the wreckage, to find a way to move forward in a life that's been turned upside down. It was all a game to her, a double life. Mark and I, we decide to set a trap. We arrange to meet all three of us at a cafe. Clara arrives, confident, until she sees Mark and me, side by side. Her eyes widen in shock. She tries to explain, to lie again, but it's over. Mark leaves her on the spot. Me, I'm left there, devastated, but relieved to know the truth. I watch as Clara's face transforms from confidence to confusion, then to fear. It's like watching a mask fall off, revealing the true person underneath. She stammers, trying to come up with an explanation, an excuse, anything. But her words fall flat, her lies transparent. Mark is furious. He feels betrayed, used. He thought he had found something real with Clara, only to discover it was all based on lies. He confronts her, his anger palpable. Clara tries to reach out to him, to salvage what they had, but Mark's done. He walks away without looking back. I'm left sitting there, a mix of emotions churning inside me. Part of me wants to scream at her, to lash out for all the pain she's caused. But another part of me is just tired, drained from the weeks of suspicion and heartache. Clara turns to me, tears in her eyes, begging for forgiveness. She talks about making a mistake, about being confused. But her words sound hollow, rehearsed. It's like I'm seeing her for the first time, and I realize that the woman I married, the woman I loved, is gone. I feel a sense of closure, a bitter relief. The truth is out, the lies exposed. But it's a hollow victory. My marriage, my love, my trust, it's all been shattered. As I walk away from the cafe, the reality of what happened hits me. I'm alone, starting over. The future is uncertain, a blank canvas. The pain of betrayal still stings, but there's also a sense of freedom, of possibilities. I spend the next few days in a daze, trying to process everything. Friends and family reach out, offering support and comfort. But it's a journey I need to take on my own, to find who I am outside of my marriage, outside of the lies. I start to pick up the pieces of my life, to rebuild. I focus on work, on hobbies, on reconnecting with old friends. It's not easy, but each day brings a little more clarity, a little more strength. The experience has changed me. I'm more cautious, more guarded. But I also feel wiser, stronger. I've faced one of my greatest fears and survived. As I look back on the past few months, I realize that this was a necessary journey. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful, to find my way back to myself. And so I move forward, not with bitterness or regret, but with hope and determination. Life is unpredictable, messy, sometimes painful. But it's also full of new beginnings, new opportunities. The final chapter of my marriage to Clara has closed, but a new chapter in my life is just beginning. It's a chapter filled with unknowns, but I'm ready to face them head on, to embrace whatever comes my way. Clara lost a lot. Mark no longer wants to see her. As for me, I file for divorce. She leaves our apartment with her secrets and lies. I am alone, but I feel stronger, ready to face a new chapter in my life. The end is bitter, but it brings me a strange peace. The shadows of doubt have cleared, leaving a new, clear horizon. As I sit in the now empty apartment, the silence is both haunting and soothing. The walls, once filled with laughter and love, now echo with the remnants of a broken relationship. But in this emptiness, I find a sense of liberation, a blank slate to start anew. I think about Clara, about all the years we spent together. The memories are a mix of happiness and pain, a reminder of what was and what could have been. I wonder if she regrets her actions, if she ever truly loved me. But these questions no longer hold power over me. I've accepted that some answers may never come, and that's okay. The divorce proceedings are straightforward, yet emotionally taxing. Each signature, each legal document, is a step away from my old life and a step toward something new. It's a process of letting go, of closing a chapter that I thought would last a lifetime. As the days turn into weeks, I find myself rediscovering who I am. I pick up old hobbies that I had set aside, find joy in simple pleasures. I reconnect with friends, some of whom I hadn't spoken to since Clara and I got together. They welcome me back with open arms, offering support and a listening ear. Work becomes a refuge, a place to focus my energy and thoughts. I throw myself into projects, find satisfaction in accomplishments. It's a welcome distraction, a way to rebuild my confidence and sense of self. I also start to explore new interests, stepping out of my comfort zone. I join a hiking group, discover a love for the outdoors that I never knew I had. Each hike, each summit, feels like a metaphor for my life, a journey with ups and downs, but with breathtaking views along the way. Dating is the furthest thing from my mind, but I find myself enjoying the company of others. There's no pressure, no expectations, just the simple pleasure of human connection. I realize that I'm not ready for another relationship, not yet. But it's comforting to know that when I am, there's a whole world of possibilities out there. One evening, as I watch the sunset from my balcony, I reflect on the past months. The pain, the betrayal, the growth. It's been a journey of self-discovery, of healing. I've learned that life is unpredictable, that people can surprise you in both good and bad ways. But I've also learned that I'm resilient, that I can face challenges and come out stronger on the other side. I think about Clara, hope that she finds whatever it is she's looking for. There's no bitterness, no anger, just a wish for her to find happiness, even if it's not with me. As the sky turns from orange to purple, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. The future is uncertain, full of unknowns. But I'm ready to embrace it, to see where life takes me. I've closed the chapter on Clara, on us. Now, it's time to start writing my own story, one filled with hope, adventure, and endless possibilities. Stay tuned to find out how this shocking tale unfolds, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Hi, everyone. For anonymity, I'll be using fake names for this post. My wife, Kara, 29 female, and I were married for 3 years, and we were two love peas in a pod. When Kara and I first met, I didn't think I would spend my life with another woman apart from her. I had this certainty about her, and from first sight, I knew she was the one for me. Also, the increase in my heartbeat confirmed that as I approached her to speak to her, the first time I saw Kara was at a distant friend's birthday, which I was dragged to attend by another friend. She was sitting with a group of friends, and they were all chatting loudly and drinking. It was a late-night party, and there was so much to drink, but I didn't drink more than a glass, because I wanted to be in the right state of mind for work the following day. The thing is, I used to be a timid person, and approaching ladies, gorgeous ladies like Kara, was a big deal for me. My friend, who dragged me to the party, noticed that I could not take my eyes off her since we arrived there, and without asking if I wanted to, he ordered the waiter to send her an expensive bottle of champagne and tell her it was from me. After it was delivered, I noticed that all her friends at her table turned in my direction, and they all smiled simultaneously. Then she smiled, raised her glass, and mouthed, "Thank you." Almost immediately, my friend pulled me from the chair I sat on and asked me to go and say hi to her. He knew I had been single for more than 4 years, and he wanted me to maximize my once-in-a-blue-moon pull of attraction, I felt. He knew I wouldn't like the idea, but he kept insisting, and after persuading and trying to convince me for nearly 15 minutes, I summoned the courage, walked to her table, and asked if we could talk privately. Her friends excused her, and we sat at a different table. We didn't say a lot that night because I was stunned by her beauty, and to be honest, it had been years since I talked to a woman about something that wasn't work-related. I worked as a programmer at a prominent tech firm in our city and considered anything other than work a waste of my time. We introduced ourselves to each other, and I found out she was currently doing her PhD, even without saying so much. I'm sure my constant blushes and ear-to-ear grin had given me out that night. When we delved into her work life, I discovered she worked part-time as a junior writer/editor at a publishing company, and I believed her because she sounded intelligent, and there was something about the way she spoke. After our little chit-chat that night, we exchanged contacts, and I left the party because I had to rest for a few hours before going to work the following morning. We had our first official date about a week later because I was caught in the web of deadlines, and she claimed she was busy too. Our first date was more fun than the night we met. We talked about so many things, and I loved that she was very free-spirited. She smiled and laughed wholeheartedly, and it was evident that she enjoyed our conversation and our time together. After our first date, we hung out more often and visited each other's apartments. Before we started dating, she would come over to my place on weekends, and we would try cooking a meal together from a cookbook, baking pastries with strange names, or we would just do something fun. As weeks passed, we got closer to each other, and I could not go to bed without thinking about her every night. I saw all the signs that convinced me she was the one for me, and I kept imagining what it would feel like to spend the rest of my life with Kara. As friends, I took her shopping and got her flowers and the things I knew she loved. I knew she loved me too, and I also knew she wanted me to ask her out. Her body language said it all, and eventually I did, and she said yes. For me, money was not a problem. I was well paid, and most importantly, I loved a spoiled Kara because it made me happy. We ended up dating for only 13 months, and we got married. We had a beachside wedding. Kara wanted that since childhood, and I was happy to do that. The wedding was small because we wanted to use part of the money for our vacation, and we did that. The first 2 years of our marriage were heaven on earth. Kara and I were much more in love with each other than when we were dating. Our bond grew stronger, and we literally did everything together. In fact, I only had breakfast, lunch, or dinner if I had it with Kara. We would eat together in the morning before she left for work. Lunch would be at a restaurant close to her office, and we always had dinner together when she returned home. Even when she had to spend extra time in the office, I always waited for her to come home so we could eat together. Aside from eating together, we had the rule of going to bed early so we could bond, get intimate, and talk about random things before sleeping off. Already in our first year of marriage, I had been promoted to a senior programmer in the firm I worked for, and my work became 100% remote unless I chose to go to the office. Kara was also done with her PhD and now working full-time as a writer/editor in her publishing company, which also came with an increased workload. Unfortunately, a year after Kara started working as a full-time editor for the publishing company, she got laid off. The company was cutting down on staff, and Kara also had to go. This was in the third year of our marriage, which changed many things between us. Being sacked took its mental toll on her, and she slowly became depressed. We no longer talked like we used to, or did our usual weekend cooking tradition. She became a shadow of herself, and it hurt me to see her that way. I even offered to double what she was paid at the publishing company, hoping it would brighten up her mood or cheer her up, but it didn't. She told me she wasn't working there because of the money, but because it was always her dream to work as an editor in that particular organization. Despite shuffling our house and her parents' house, Kara was still not herself, and I was becoming more concerned. It wasn't until a friend of mine recommended that she talk to a therapist, and that was when we began to see changes. Slowly, she became more active and the vibrant, cheerful woman I used to know. She met with her therapist 3 times a week, and I even insisted that she made it 4 times a week because I was impressed with the results I saw. I wanted her to be fully back to how she used to be, so bad that I didn't notice something else happening between her and the therapist. I was cleaning the house to surprise her the day I found out. She had gone to her parents' house the previous day, and I didn't want her to come home and clean. I even went grocery shopping to make her favorite meal and got scented candles to make her dinner special. I cooked first so I could clean up at once. I was in our room cleaning and folding clothes in the wardrobe when my hands touched a small journal that was partly tucked under a pile of clothes. I pulled the journal and realized it was from her therapist because it had the company's insignia on it. I know I should not have read it, but I was curious about what she had been journaling. To my greatest surprise, I found out Kara and her therapist were having an affair, and she journaled every bit of it. I was speechless and heartbroken. I went through the journal again to be sure of what I had read, and the content didn't change. Kara was cheating on me, and she was unapologetic about it. She even wrote about how her therapist was better in bed than me. I've got to admit, I was hurt and cried like a baby that day, and everything I planned for us was ruined. I laid on our bed for hours, and when it dawned on me that what had been done, I wanted them to pay for hurting me. I took pictures of the journal and filed a complaint to the therapist's office. I even took the journal with me in case they had doubts, and they were disappointed when they read it. When Kara came home that day, I told her I dropped by the therapist's office, and she was surprised. When she asked why I did, I dropped the journal on the table, and she began to cry. Immediately she started begging me, but there was no way I would listen. Reading her journal broke my heart, and I could not forget all I had read. I kicked her out of the house and threw her stuff on the porch. She was so embarrassed and could not move, so I called her parents and asked them to come and get her off my property. In addition, I mailed the photocopy pages of the journal to Kara's grandmother, who was very fond of me, and she was taken out of her grandmother's will. Her parents begged me to not tell her grandmother, but that was my ultimate revenge plan. Ultimately, we got divorced, and her therapist had his license revoked. It was good that we didn't have kids yet, so it was easier for me to move on with my life. Kara became depressed and more miserable after we divorced, and I am glad she had to live with her parents' disappointment and shame. She called the house several times to beg me to take her back, but I wanted nothing to do with her. The last time Kara came, she met another woman and attacked her. I was so mad that I called the cops on her, and after that, I filed for a restraining order, and that was the last time I saw her. As for the woman she saw, we broke up because I was still hurting, and I have not completely moved on, but I'm glad I'm making progress. Opie, you handled the situation maturely and gave her a taste of her own medicine. Despite being a good husband and trying to support your wife, she still chose to cheat on you with her therapist. I know the things you read in a journal must have broken your heart, but you should understand that humans are full of disappointment, no matter how close we are to them. It's sad things ended that way, but you should be glad it did. She probably hates you for ruining her life and taking her out of the grandmother's will, but revenge is best served cold. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now, let's move on to the second story of the day. The first time my wife and I met was at a small restaurant near my workplace. That day, I went to have lunch with one of my colleagues, and I could not ignore her sitting alone. I was used to approaching girls and sweeping them off their feet with my sweet lines, and I thought I would get lucky with my wife. But she completed the line I wanted to use on her before I did. I was impressed to see that, but it also meant she would be a tough nut to crack. And like I had predicted, she was. Instead of blushing and smiling like other women, she locked her eyes with mine, faked a smile, and continued eating her food. That was my first time being ignored like that by a woman, and it was embarrassing because everyone's eye was on us. Still, overall, I found her attitude very charming and different from the rest of the women I had met. I kept talking to her without getting a response, and finally, after I tried so much, she smiled. When she smiled genuinely that time, I knew I had broken through her high walls, and with a snap of a finger, we were talking and laughing together. The conversation we had felt like we had known each other for a long time flowed freely and naturally. Despite being complete strangers, we chatted like best friends who had not seen each other in a while, and at the end of my 30-minute break, we exchanged contacts and Facebook handles. There was something I was looking out for, and when I saw that, I asked her out. I was convinced we were a perfect fit, and I didn't want to make the same mistake I made with my ex-girlfriends. Of course, she said yes, and we became inseparable. We even wore matching outfits occasionally because she thought it was sweet. We dated for 9 months before we married, and though my friends thought I was moving too fast, I didn't think there was a better time to officially make her mine. About 2 weeks before our wedding, I leased a bigger apartment, and we moved in when we returned from our honeymoon. The first year of our marriage was splendid. I had never been deeply in love like I was with my wife, so I did anything I could to make her smile every day. Before we got married, I noticed that my wife was fond of my stepbrother, and she often talked about him when we returned from our family hangout. My stepbrother was a gym instructor, and as a result of that, he was heavily built. He was also handsome, and the kind of guy ladies love to be around. In the past, I had female friends who abandoned me the moment they met my stepbrother, and this mostly had to do with his looks. Since my wife had 3 older brothers and was used to being around guys, I believed she also saw him as her brother. I never suspected that her talking about his looks and how well built he looked was her subtly telling me that she was into him. I was even glad that she had a way of always bringing him into her conversations, as well as her brothers. This was because I wanted our families to be one big happy family, and I didn't want her shutting out my family members, including my stepbrother. I had been with him since I was 13 and he was 17, and I didn't want anyone to come between the bond we shared. On my 28th birthday, My wife decided to throw a surprise birthday party for me at home, and she tricked me into coming home early from work that day. I had to take the family emergency excuse to leave work early, only to go home to a packed house. My parents, stepbrother, and some of my friends were there, and my wife's parents and her older brother were there too. The surprise worked, and I was so happy to see everyone at my house that it was a small party with a lot to eat and drink. By this time, our marriage was already 1 year old, and we didn't have any children yet. After eating and drinking, everyone decided to hang around, since they were mostly family members and close friends. Also, it was pouring heavily outside, and no one had the excuse of going to work the next day since it was a Saturday. Everyone in the room was an adult, and in no time, we were arguing about politics and our economic crisis. The conversation grew intense as we all tried to outtalk one another, and that was when I noticed my wife was not with us. I didn't even notice when she left because she was sitting behind me, so I asked around for her. Everyone said they had not seen her until her mom casually said she had seen her walk down the corridor with my stepbrother. At first, I didn't want to go and look for them, but after some minutes, and I didn't see them or hear their voices, I excused myself. Walking down the corridor, I paid attention in case I heard voices, but I didn't hear a sound. When I didn't hear a sound, I felt something was wrong, but I couldn't tell what it was. As I approached our room, I began to hear soft muffled moans, and my heart nearly dropped in my stomach. I walked closer to our room, pressed my ear against the door, and could not believe what I heard. I was devastated and heartbroken, but I had to keep myself together. A part of me wanted to go in there and give them the beatings of their lives, but I knew it would only complicate things. So, I slowly pushed the door open, and luckily, they didn't hear a creak because they were so busy. I turned on my phone video recorder, recorded them, and quietly returned to the living room. About 15 minutes later, my stepbrother returned first, and some minutes later, she came in. She changed her clothes and took her bath, so no one would suspect anything. When we were complete, I asked if everyone wanted to see a movie, and they all agreed. Then I told my wife to go and make popcorn for everyone. While she was making the popcorn, I transferred the video I had recorded to my flash drive, so I could plug it into my large screen television. We were settled as soon as the popcorn was shared with everyone. I played the video, and though they did not understand at first, their mouths eventually fell when they watched the video. My wife and stepbrother were the most surprised ones, and they could not say anything or defend themselves. They sat there speechless. Our parents were shocked and disappointed, and none of them could say anything. They were all ashamed and expected me to react in a certain way, but I didn't. Immediately after the video ended, I asked my wife and stepbrother if they liked the movie, but they couldn't maintain eye contact. Funnily enough, it stopped pouring at the same time, but no one made an attempt to leave. When my wife could not bear the silence anymore, she started crying and begging. Her mom was so angry that she yelled at her, but she didn't stop. I went into our room and packed her things so she could leave with her parents, and eventually she did. No one dared beg on her behalf, not even her parents. My stepbrother left before my parents, but what he had done caused a rift between us. Everyone left that day with their heads buried in shame, especially my wife, and there's no need to ask if I divorced her because I did. It was even worse because I never spoke to her again. I didn't only cut ties with her, I did with my stepbrother too, and things never remained the same in my family. It's been 2 years now, and I'm finally able to tell this story because I have been able to let go. Though it hurt a lot, and I still don't think she deserved forgiveness, I had to do it for myself. I met another woman, and we're taking things one step at a time. Opie, why would you keep hurting for a woman who cheated on you with your stepbrother, not minding that the whole family was in your house? That's pure evil and disrespect. Both of them were toxic, and you did the right thing by cutting ties with them. That was the height of betrayal, and none of them deserves to be in your life. I do not think she would have only cheated on you with your stepbrother. Maybe she would have done the same with other attractive men, so consider this good riddance of taking out the trash. I hope you are able to heal from this. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, Comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Hey everyone, welcome back. You won't believe the shocking discovery I made about my wife and our neighbor. I, 33 male, have been married to my wife, 30 female, for 7 years. It felt like my wife and I were working to get our life together for a long time. Eventually, we bought a house because I finally saved enough money. She was making money too, but it was barely above minimum wage. My job required that I travel a lot, and at the most I would be gone for 1 week at a time. We made it work by video calling and texting a lot. However, it became clear that my time away bothered her. She would go out with friends often and started doing that even when I was home. This was devastating to me because I thought if she loved me, she would spend as much time with me as possible. One night, we were both home and she was absorbed in her phone. I finally had enough and asked her what was going on. She became defensive immediately and said that she didn't feel close to me anymore because I wasn't home often enough. I reminded her that she suggested I get this job so we could afford nice things in life. She said she really enjoyed the relationships she had with her friends and needed that time to relieve stress. I asked her if I could meet her friends, and she said no, that it would be awkward for her to combine her home life with her work life. I was deeply hurt and could tell I wasn't going to persuade her, so I dropped it for the time being. Soon I was told to go on another business trip. I told my wife it would be longer than it really was. When I came home, I could see a shirtless man through the front window of my house. I swear it was like my heart stopped beating. I assumed it was one of her coworkers, but when I got closer it turned out to be our married neighbor from down the street. Out of all the people my wife could be cheating on me with, it was someone I knew. He came to our house with his wife a month ago for a barbecue, and for all I knew, that's when their affair started. I watched through the window easily, getting a clear view of them kissing and touching like they were a couple. I walked back to my car and called the guy's wife. These were neighbors we exchanged numbers with and asked to watch our house when we went away. She answered and I asked her if she knew where her husband was. She was very confused and said he was working late. I played it cool and just told her there was a package accidentally delivered to our house. She arrived minutes later to get the fictional package. I watched from my car as my wife opened the door in her robe. They talked for a moment, confused until the woman's husband came into view behind my wife. The woman started screaming and asking a lot of questions, trying to enter the house. As the scene escalated, I called my wife's parents. I told them it was nice knowing them and their daughter, but I was going to leave her because she cheated on me. They were shocked and started asking questions. I told them if they wanted to know what was going on, they could come to our house now for a surprise on what was happening. I wanted them to witness their daughter's affair in case she tried to spin the narrative. While they drove over, I walked straight into my house. My wife tried talking to me through yelling and sobs as she was being attacked by the other woman, and her husband tried holding her back. It was a huge mess and drama that I was not about to get caught up in. I went straight to the traveling bag that I kept packed in case of a short no-miss trip. I walked back out of the house and told my wife she needed to leave with her parents when they arrived. This confused and panicked her. She clarified that her parents were coming, and I simply nodded as I put my bag in my car. I sat in my locked car until her parents arrived and our neighbors refused to leave. The cheating man was trying to convince his wife to leave it alone, but she was not having it. She got in several slaps when my wife let down her guard and slapped her husband whenever possible. Obviously, all the questions in the world wouldn't make sense of unexpected infidelity. Nothing could soothe this betrayal. When my wife's parents arrived, I left. I don't know how they sorted out everything, but when I returned to my house 1 day later, the door was unlocked and a few things of mine were missing. After I filed for divorce, the calls, messages, and texts from my wife majorly increased. She was appalled by my sudden actions and wanted a chance to talk about what happened. I didn't care. I wanted a wife that wouldn't cheat on me, and I wasn't going to get that from her. She lived with her disappointed parents, and at the divorce hearing, she looked ragged and tired. She didn't work the same job anymore and certainly didn't look happy. I found a ton of support from my friends and family, while everyone turned against her because of her irresponsibility and selfishness. I started dating again, but I'm mostly just relieved to be free from my ex and have my house back. Wow, OP, I'm so proud of you for keeping your cool as all of this went down. You managed to inform everyone necessary of what was going on so that you could emerge from this unscathed. Of course, this excludes the emotional turmoil involved in this betrayal, but I have faith in your ability to stay focused on your life's goals. It was so great you were able to call the guy's wife and have her come do the brunt of the work for you. Your wife deserved all of the stress and slaps she endured. You were right to end the marriage, and I'm sure you'll find a woman much better than your ex-wife. I wish you the best of luck with overcoming this situation. Now for today's second story. We started dating in September 2018 on my birthday, so that day has always been extra special to me. My partner does roster work. She works 8 days on a mine site and is backed 6 days off. I work a decent 9 to 5 job, so we are both pretty well off. She's also an international resident, so I decided to help her get her visa to stay. We applied for the de facto spouse visa at the end of 2020. For the first 3.5 years, our relationship was really good. We both loved each other and were doing so much together. Unfortunately, some clashes between her and my mom led to us moving out and renting a place for 6 months. She knew how to do everything. She's extremely independent, so she knew how to take care of a house and cooked really good food. I, on the other hand, was a bit of a dropkick and didn't know how to do any of that properly. My mom looked after me a bit too much, which handicapped me a lot when I moved out. Whilst I was working every day and being very smart with our money, we never had any money problems. I was also a bit selfish as a 23-year-old who tended to spend a bit too much time at the computer and away from household chores. I did make sure I spent some time with her though. We watched some good shows like Game of Thrones, Money Heist, and Merlin. I did, however, clean enough to ensure we got 100% of our bond money back. I did all the de-weeding by hand. After our 6-month lease was finally up, we bought a place together. This was around September 2021. She started her mining job around December 2021. And I, still being a dropkick, didn't do much of the housework. Although I did learn to cook some dishes as I needed to make sure I kept myself fed whilst she was on site. But I still didn't do the laundry or vacuum and mop the floor because my standard of cleanliness was so much different from hers. Instead, I spent my time learning how to invest because she told me she wanted to make a lot of money. I designed an investment plan just to suit her. I enjoyed investing a lot, cleaning not so much. In April of 2022, and she broke down in our bedroom at my lack of help around the house. She told me she was incredibly stressed with having to come back and do all the housework after 8 long days on the mine site. At that stage, I finally woke up and became the adult I should have become long ago. I started vacuuming and mopping the whole house once a fortnight and doing the laundry every week, making sure she had an empty basket to work with when she came back. It was like a switch was flicked on in my head. I should also mention that sex was non-existent in the last year of our relationship. She didn't want to take the pill due to side effects, although she was on it periodically for the first 3 years, and we had sex then. I went to buy a pack of condoms, but then she went and hid the condoms when we were about to have sex, so I just refused to have sex with her because I didn't want to have unprotected sex and risk pregnancy. She even suggested that I take the male version of the pill that would make my sperm infertile or something. I don't even know what she was on about there. I kept up my routine, making my own lunches and maintaining the house while she was away. I finally became an adult that could survive on my own, but the relationship didn't seem to improve. Slowly over time, she stopped cooking for me and didn't like me touching her in bed. She also gave me her cheek for kisses instead of her lips. Looking back, these were all red flags, but I was blinded by love and my desperation to save the relationship. I kept up with the cleaning and maintenance. She even went back on the pill to balance her hormones, or so she claimed. I tried initiating sex with her again at that point, but she refused. And then came September 17th, 2022. I was mopping the floor in my computer room and couldn't use it because the floor was wet. I went to use her laptop instead and saw everything in Messenger. She had been in a casual but intimate relationship with a man on the mine site a little younger than me. The text messages were extremely explicit. I saw they had this going on since late July. I couldn't go any further back because I was about to throw up. I confronted her about it that night, and she told me she had been extremely stressed with work and had fallen out of love. I didn't understand. She loved me when I was a total tropic. Then, all of a sudden, I became this mature and capable adult, but she didn't love me anymore. I was a total wreck for the next week and couldn't sleep well. I decided to call things off with her. I cannot be with someone who commits infidelity. We are going to split up our assets and go our separate ways. She told me she wants to remain friends, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, nor do I think that's a good idea for either of us. This also has implications for her visa. She is currently on her temporary visa until the end of November this year, at which point we were supposed to sign off on some documents, so she could get her permanent residency. I told her I refused to sign any documentation as I basically would have to lie, which could get me sent to jail along with a big fine. She may still be able to get her permanent residency if the department decides to award it to her, but she is at a much greater risk of having to go back to a student visa, which means she will lose her mining job. Along with her life savings of having to enroll in some course, she doesn't want to complete and pay international student fees, which are bloody expensive. Along with wasting years of her life just to progress her spouse visa all for nothing. Opie, this was an exit affair. By the time she began crying to you about your lack of effort, she had already checked out. She unfortunately chose the most immature way to do it. At least you can use this as your own learning experience and personal growth. You didn't deserve to be cheated on. She could have been honest at any time. It would be best if you get to no contact as quickly as possible. Don't kick yourself too much. You were 20 years old when you entered into this relationship. You showed a great deal of maturity when you changed your behavior to help your partner and the relationship. Regardless, you have dodged a bullet and you will be better off without her. A young man who is capable of living on his own and who can cook and clean is a huge plus in the dating field. Enjoy being single. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hey there, I'm Mark, just your regular guy who happens to dabble in software engineering. My life was pretty standard, you know, until that one week turned everything upside down. So, let me take you back to when it all started. I was out in Europe for this big tech seminar, the kind that has you wearing name tags and pretending to understand accents from 6 different countries. It was supposed to be this week-long affair, but as luck would have it, things wrapped up a day early. Most folks would be bummed about losing a day in Europe, but me? All I could think about was getting back to Linda, my wife. We've been hitched for 15 years, and she's one of those school teachers that kids and parents love, a real gem. I'm standing there at the seminar, and my boss, this no-nonsense guy who rarely cracks a smile, comes up and says, "Great job, Mark. You can head home early if you want." I'm thinking, heck yeah, I'm getting out of here. But here's the catch, I didn't tell Linda. I thought, why not surprise her? You see, we're that couple who still tries to keep things exciting, surprise dates, impromptu road trips, the whole shebang. So, there I am, hustling through the airport, trying to catch an earlier flight. But, of course, it couldn't be that easy. My usual airport is an hour north of our cozy little suburban home, but I end up finding a flight to this smaller airport, almost 2 hours to the south. Never used it before, but hey, adventure, right? I get on the flight, it's cramped, my knees are hugging my chest, and the guy next to me is snoring like a bear. But I'm buzzing with excitement, thinking about Linda's face when she sees me. I land, grab a rental car, one of those tiny things that you pray doesn't fall apart on the highway, and start my midnight road trip back home. Now, picture this. I'm pulling into our driveway. It's just shy of midnight, and the street's quiet, like one of those scenes from a movie where you know something's about to happen. But the house? It's dark, pitch black. And Linda's car? Nowhere in sight. My heart's doing this funny little dance in my chest, not the good kind. I'm lugging my suitcase inside, trying to make sense of it. Where could she be at this hour, right? I'm not one to jump to conclusions, so I fish out my phone and dial her number. It rings, and finally, She picks up on the third ring. Her voice is groggy, like I just woke her up. Hey, hun, just checking in. Everything okay? I ask, trying to sound casual. She's all, yeah, it's past midnight, I was sleeping. See you at the airport tomorrow morning, right? Now, I'm standing there, phone in hand, feeling like I've just walked into a weird movie. I'm like, sleeping, but not at home. I play it cool, though. Yeah, yeah. See you tomorrow, I stay, and we hang up. But get this. I call her home phone, and guess what? It rings just fine. So, the whole phone's broken story? Not adding up. I'm not Sherlock Holmes or anything, but something's fishy. So, I start doing the only logical thing. I search the house. You know, under the bed, in the closets, the usual hiding spots. But nope, no Linda, no nothing. Just me in a whole lot of silence. So, there I am, sitting in our dark living room, thinking, what now, Mark? I've always considered myself a pretty sharp guy, not easily fooled. But right then, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was missing a huge piece of the puzzle. And that, my friends, is where it all began. Little did I know, that night was just the opening act of a show I never bought tickets for. All right, so where did I leave off? Oh yeah, sitting in my dark living room, feeling like the lead in a mystery movie I never auditioned for. So, I decide it's time for some good old-fashioned detective work. And by detective work, I mean sitting on the couch, trying to piece together the puzzle with a bag of stale potato chips. It's getting late, or early, depending on how you look at it, and I'm just about ready to call it a night when I spot something on the kitchen table. It's a receipt from some fancy hotel downtown, dated for that very night. Now, I'm no genius, but I know Linda wouldn't be at a hotel for a school project. My mind's racing with possibilities, none of them good. But I needed to know, you know? So, I do what any reasonable person would do at 1 a.m. I drive to the hotel. I'm half hoping I'm wrong, that there's a perfectly logical explanation for all this. I get to the hotel, and it's one of those places with a shiny lobby and a doorman who looks at you like you're lost. I wander in, trying to blend in with the late-night crowd. And there, in the corner of the lobby lounge, is Linda. But she's not alone. She's laughing and chatting with some guy I've never seen before. He's got that. I spend more time in the gym than at work. Look. Now, I'm standing there, feeling like I've been sucker punched. I duck behind a potted plant. Classic spy move, right? And listen in. And let me tell you, the things I heard. It's like listening to a soap opera, but worse, because it's your life. They're talking about sneaking away for weekend trips, secret messages, the whole 9 yards. My head's spinning, and I'm trying to process it all. It's like one of those moments when you realize the quiet life you thought you had is anything but. I could have walked up to them, made a scene, but I didn't. I had a different plan brewing. I sneak out of the hotel and drive back home, my mind working overtime. By the time I get back, it's almost dawn and I've got it. A plan to bring this whole charade out into the open. So, there I was, back at home, reeling from what I'd just seen at the hotel. Linda, my Linda, laughing it up with some mystery guy. Felt like a gut punch, you know? But I wasn't about to let this slide without digging deeper. No way. The next day, instead of confronting her or blowing up her phone, I play it cool. I call her up and spin a tale. Hey, hun, looks like this seminar's going into overtime. Won't be back till next week. She sounds relieved, says she'll miss me, but I can hear that edge in her voice, the one that says she's got other plans. I start tailing her, keeping it low-key. Sounds crazy, right? But I had to know the full story. Turns out, Linda's got a whole routine. Fancy dinners, late nights, the works. And always with Mr. Muscles, as I've started calling him in my head. Each day, I'm piecing together more of the puzzle. They're not just flings or one-time things. This is serious. They're talking about future plans, sneaking away for weekends, even joking about a life together. It's like watching someone else's life fall apart, except it's mine. And the more I find out, the angrier I get. But anger's like a fire, right? Gotta channel it right, or it burns everything down. So, I hatch a plan. A plan to expose this whole charade for what it is, a sham. I don't call her friends or family, not yet. First, I need solid proof, something undeniable. I'm talking photos, receipts, the kind of evidence you see in courtroom dramas. It's meticulous work, tracking their movements, snapping pics without being seen. I feel like a character in a spy novel, only the stakes are my marriage. So, there I am. Mark the makeshift detective, tailing Linda and her gym buddy-turned-lover, whom I've dubbed Mr. Muscles in my head. Each day, I'm gathering bits and pieces, snapshots of their secret world. It's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, except every piece is a stab in the heart. During my sleuthing, I stumble upon something, or rather, someone interesting. Mr. Muscles has a wife. Yeah, plot thickens, right? She's this elegant woman, living in the suburbs, probably unaware her husband is playing Casanova in the city. Now, I'm thinking, Mark, you've got to meet this lady. But how? I can't just knock on her door and say, hey, our spouses are having an affair. So, I cook up a plan. I find out where she works, a local art gallery, and plan a chance encounter. I walk in one afternoon, pretending to be an art enthusiast. There she is, graceful, maybe a bit lonely. We strike up a conversation about some abstract painting. I'm nodding and smiling, not understanding a thing about it. We get to talking, and I gently steer the conversation towards personal life. She mentions her husband, how he's often away for business. My insides screaming, if only you knew, lady. I keep visiting the gallery, building a rapport with her. Then, one day, I drop the bomb. I think our spouses might be more than just colleagues, I say, showing her a photo of Linda and Mr. Muscles a bit too cozy at a cafe. She's shocked, devastated. I can see the realization dawning on her, the pieces falling into place in her mind. But she's strong, doesn't crumble. Instead, she asks, what do we do now? That's when I lay out my plan. Let's expose them, but in a way they'd never see coming, I suggest. She's hesitant at first, but then there's this fire in her eyes. She's in. So, there I am, with all this evidence of Linda's infidelity, feeling like my whole world's flipped upside down. But I'm not about to let this slide without making a statement, a big one. I start plotting a grand reveal, something that'll show everyone the truth about Linda and Mr. Muscles. I decide to throw a surprise gathering at our house, the place where they often meet up, thinking they're safe in our little love nest. I call up our friends, family, even some of Linda's colleagues. Tell them we're throwing an impromptu party to celebrate an unexpected business success of mine. Everyone's excited, praising me for my hard work, completely unaware of the real drama about to unfold. The plan's simple. Have everyone hide in the living room, lights off, waiting for Linda and Mr. Muscles to walk into their not-so-secret rendezvous. Then, bam, lights on, and the truth's out for all to see. The day arrives, and our house is buzzing with whispered anticipation. Friends and family are tucked away, some hiding behind furniture, others in adjoining rooms, all waiting for the big moment. Linda and Mr. Muscles, clueless about the setup, stroll in, lost in their own little world. They're laughing, touching, starting to get real cozy, thinking they're alone. I'm watching from my hiding spot, heart pounding, waiting for the perfect moment. And then, when they're just about to cross a line they can't come back from, I hit the lights. The room erupts in gasps and murmurs. Linda and Mr. Muscles freeze like deer in headlights. The look of shock, embarrassment, guilt, it's all there, painted across their faces. Our friends and family are in utter disbelief. Some are shaking their heads, others looking away, unable to believe what they're seeing. Linda's sister, who's always been her champion, looks like she's about to cry. My best friend, who's known us since college, just stares, his expression a mix of anger and pity. Linda's colleagues, who've always seen her as the perfect professional, are whispering among themselves, their respect for her visibly crumbling. And there, in the midst of it all, is Linda's mother, her face a picture of shock and disappointment. As for Mr. Muscles, he's stammering, trying to make sense of the situation, but there's no talking his way out of this one. His eyes dart around the room, looking for an escape, but there's none to be found. Linda's trying to speak, to explain, but her words are lost in the chaos of the moment. The truth's out, and there's no hiding from it now. The facade of the perfect marriage, the ideal life, it's all come crashing down in the most public way possible. The aftermath is a blur. Some guests leave, unable to handle the tension. Others stay, offering me their support, their expressions a mix of sympathy and disbelief. Linda's left standing there, her secret life exposed, her world shattered just as much as mine. And me? I'm feeling a whirlwind of emotions. Relief that the truth's finally out, anger at the betrayal, sadness at what's been lost. But above all, there's a sense of closure. The lies are over, and now, it's time to start picking up the pieces. The room's still echoing with the last traces of the night's drama. There I am, standing in the wreckage of what used to be my life, surrounded by the stunned faces of friends and family. Linda's standing there, looking like she's been hit by a freight train. Mr. Muscles, well, he's already slinked out the door, tail between his legs. The air's thick with tension, unspoken questions hanging like heavy clouds. Linda's sister, Karen, is the first to break the silence. She's always been the peacemaker, the one who tries to find the good in everyone. But even she can't mask her disappointment. Linda, how could you? She whispers, more in sorrow than in anger. Linda's colleagues, some of them close friends of ours for years, shuffle uncomfortably. I can see the respect they once had for her dissolving in front of my eyes. It's one thing to hear rumors, it's another to see the truth laid bare in your living room. Then there's Linda's mother, a stern woman who's always valued family above all else. The look she gives Linda is one I can't quite decipher. It's a mix of anger, heartbreak, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of understanding. But she doesn't say a word. She doesn't have to. As the night wears on, the guests begin to leave, offering me sympathetic pats on the back and awkward, mournful looks. I'm left alone with Linda and the deafening silence. She tries to speak, to explain, but what's there to say? The trust is broken, the damage done. Finally, she says something that catches me off guard. I never meant to hurt you, Mark. I lost my way. Her voice is a silence like a knife. I want to be angry, to shout and rage at her. But all I feel is a profound sadness, a sense of loss so deep it's almost physical. I know, I reply, and it's the truth. I do know. People don't just wake up one day and decide to wreck their lives. It happens bit by bit, choice by choice. And maybe, in some way, I played a part in it too. The house feels empty as the last guest leaves. It's just Linda and me, standing amidst the ruins of our marriage. We talk, not about us, but about practical things, living arrangements, finances, how we'll explain this to our friends and family. As dawn breaks, Linda packs a bag and leaves. I watch her drive away, and there's a moment where I almost call out to her, ask her to stay and work it out. But some things, once broken, can't be fixed. And maybe, just maybe, it's better this way. In the silence of the morning, I sit down with a cup of coffee, staring at the mess in the living room, the remnants of the party that wasn't really a party. And I realize that this is it, the first day of the rest of my life. It's a daunting thought, starting over. But there's also a sense of freedom, a chance to rebuild, to find out who I am when I'm not part of Mark and Linda. It's not going to be easy, but then again, the best things in life rarely are. So, with the morning sun streaming through the window, I make a promise to myself to learn from this, to grow, and to never lose sight of who I am again. Because in the end, that's all we really have, ourselves, our choices, and the paths we choose to walk. The days following the party-turned-revelation are a blur of emotions and decisions. The house, once filled with love and laughter, now echoes with the silence of absence. I go through the motions, dealing with the fallout, answering calls from concerned friends and family, but inside, I'm numb. But life, as it tends to do, keeps moving. I return to work, throwing myself into projects and meetings, anything to keep my mind occupied. My colleagues, aware of the situation, offer a mix of sympathy and space. It's appreciated, but there's this unspoken understanding that Mark and Linda, they knew is no more. In the quiet of the evenings, I find myself reflecting on everything. How did we get here? Were there signs I missed? Could I have done something differently? It's a dangerous spiral, and I have to constantly remind myself not to get sucked into the abyss of what ifs. A couple of weeks later, I get a call from Karen, Linda's sister. She's been caught in the middle of this, trying to support Linda while also understanding my pain. We meet for coffee, a neutral ground to talk. Karen looks tired, worn down by the family drama. She's struggling. Mark, Karen says softly, stirring her coffee. Not that it excuses anything, but she's lost, too. I nod, understanding. Despite everything, I can't help but feel a pang of concern for Linda. I hope she finds what she's looking for, I reply, and I mean it. Karen gives me a small, sad smile. And you, Mark, what are you looking for now? Her question catches me off guard. What am I looking for? Redemption? Closure? A new beginning? I'm not sure. All I know is that I can't stay anchored to the past. The conversation with Karen is a turning point. It makes me realize that holding onto anger and resentment won't change what happened. It's time to let go. Not for Linda, but for me. I start to make changes, small at first. Rearranging the furniture, taking down some old photos, creating a space that feels more like mine and less like ours. It's therapeutic in a way, a physical manifestation of the internal changes I'm going through. I reconnect with old friends, some of whom I'd lost touch with over the years. We meet for drinks, catch up on life, and their company reminds me of who I was before Linda. It's like rediscovering parts of myself that I had forgotten. One evening, I find myself at a local community center signing up for a cooking class. It's something I've always wanted to do but never got around to. Surrounded by strangers, all there for different reasons, I feel a sense of camaraderie. We're all here, trying to learn something new, to add a little flavor to our lives. As the weeks turn into months, the raw pain of the betrayal fades into a dull ache. It's still there, a part of my story, but it no longer defines me. I'm finding joy in small things. A well-cooked meal, a night out with friends, a quiet evening with a good book. And then, there's Sarah, Mr. Muscle's wife. We've kept in touch, two people bound by a shared experience of betrayal. There's a comfort in our interactions, an understanding that doesn't need words. We meet occasionally for coffee, offering each other support and a listening ear. One evening, as we're laughing over a shared joke, I realize how much I've come to value her company. She's smart, funny, and resilient. There's a connection there, something that goes beyond our shared pain. But I'm cautious, aware that both of us are still healing. As the year comes to a close, I find myself reflecting on the journey I've been on. It's been a road marked by pain, discovery, and growth. I'm not the same person I was a year ago, and that's okay. I've learned that life is unpredictable, but it's also full of possibilities. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to face it. With each passing day, I'm building a new life, one that's authentically mine. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to see what comes next. If you liked what you've read and want to stay updated on more stories, insights, or just life reflections, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you're there and interested. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing. That way, you won't miss out on any new chapters in this ever-evolving story of life, love, and learning. Trust me, there's a lot more to come, and I'd love for you to be part of this journey. So, like, subscribe, and join me as we navigate the twists and turns of this adventure called life. Thanks for being here, and I can't wait